Good afternoon to those of you watching in North America. Good evening to those of you watching in Europe, and wherever you are around the world. Welcome to Podium Esports coverage of the International Sim Racing Challenge on the iRacing Esports Network between the Porsche Club of Great Britain and the Porsche Club of America, live from Road America in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin. James Pike here, the voice of Podium Esports and the American on the broadcast here, alongside our Canadian and our Brit. We have from Windsor, Ontario, Justin Prince with us, and from Perth, Scotland, the United Kingdom, Peter Mackay. Also on board as Ryan Bauer punches all the buttons in the virtual production trailer this afternoon, evening, wherever it may be, or what time it might be, wherever you may end up being in the world. Had an interesting race last week, Peter. I'll turn to you first. A lot of fun at Silverstone and home turf for PCGB. We turn our attention now to home turf of the Porsche Club of America, and maybe no more fitting, at least by name, a track that we go visit and a circuit that we tackle than Road America to conclude this initial International Sim Racing Challenge.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure to be here. We saw an incredible tussle last week at Silverstone, the home of British motorsport, an iconic track rich in history, and Road America is the equal in North American motorsport. Of course, been around since 1955, follows the natural contours of the land. A very, very tricky track to get right, but so rewarding when you do. And well, I'm kind of jealous of our drivers who are behind the wheel tonight, because it's going to be a really special contest, I think.
And Justin Prince, we're not terribly far away from your neck of the woods. You're certainly a lot closer at Road America than we would be at a lot of other places, but this is a long circuit. 4.048 miles, 6.515 kilometers in length, the full course here at Road America, and a lot of places where you can get caught out if you're not careful.
Absolutely. The run all the way down the Road America straight off to turn one has been a trouble spot for many across the iRacing service in many events in the past. Trouble can also come down on the exit of the Moraine Street on the way to turn 5, as well as the run through Hurry Downs to turn 8, and of course the kink all the way through Kettle Bottoms off to Canada Corner. There's many different spots around this track, especially in that final section from the kink to Canada Corner, where there is a little runoff area, and it's only about a half a car length distance between you, the pavement, the grass, and the concrete barriers, and in some cases tire walls that separate you from potential damage at this racetrack today.
To learn a little bit more about the full course here at Road America, we're going to ride on board with Mike Knighton, and we're going to get a few pointers courtesy of Podium Esports resident sports car expert Taylor Burris.
Hello everyone, I'm Taylor Burris, PCA Sim Racing commentator, and welcome to beautiful Road America, America's National Motorsports Park of Speed. Located in beautiful Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, we are going to give you a turn-by-turn lap guide along this famous circuit here of 14 turns with none other than Mike Knighton, PCA Sim Racer and founding member of the PCA Sim Racing Committee. Coming up over the hill, we are starting our lap for lap number 1. As you can see, this is the longest straightaway here at Road America, so drivers will be hitting at top speeds here before hitting the brakes around the second brake marker for the first turn. And they will be dropping it down to about third gear to try to keep it towards the apex, washing the car up to the outside of the exit. Turn 2 and turn 3, corner entry will not be as important as your corner exit off of turn number 3. Dropping down to third gear, you want to then wash the car up to the curbing, as you see Mike do. Now heading down this straightaway here through turn 4, the Moraine Sweep, and then of course the very difficult and treacherous turn 5. This is a great opportunity to slipstream past your competitors and try to make a pass for the inside as you set up for turn 5, hitting the brakes around marker number 2. You want to then hug the inside of the apex of this corner before washing up to the outskirts of the corner, setting up for turn number 6, the blind corner. Underneath the Corvette bridge, watch your braking points, otherwise you easily can go off corner as you head up to turn number 7. A high-speed corner is where you have to let the throttle lift just a little bit as you work your way through the hurry downs and turn number 8. Be careful with wheel spin and losing the car under braking as you come out of there with corner exit. Heading up to one of the famous corners here at Road America, the Carousel. Do not want to apex too early on this corner, otherwise you will lose a lot of momentum and speed. Try arcing the corner a little bit in 2 different apexes as you come off of turn number 10. down the short chute. Coming through the kink, you want to let the throttle breathe just a little bit, as these cars do not have enough downforce to go full speed. As you head through the kettle bottoms, be careful not to go 2x2 through the short little straight, as it is very treacherous to go 2x2 into Canada Corner. Dropping down to second gear, you want to keep the car as straight as possible before apexing through there, before it's back on the throttle coming out of corner exit. Try to keep the car as straight as possible through under braking, dropping it down to second gear as you work your way up through the Thunder Valley, and then finally turn 13, Bill Mitchell Bend. Coming up to turn 14, one of the most critical corners to set up for as much momentum to carry as you come off corner exit. As you come out of turn 14, it's going to be a straight shot up through the hills, up through the gears, reaching top speed, and hopefully, if you're lucky enough, you can take home the checkered flag and win here at Road America.
And our thanks to Mike Nyden and to Taylor Burris for their expertise around Road America. A lot of treacherous places that we'll talk about a little bit later. But over the course of the past few weeks, we at Podium Esports and the Porsche Club of Great Britain have had the chance to chat with some very, very famous guests that we're going to bring onto the broadcast right now. We've got a few famous folks that we've lined up some interviews with to tell you a little bit more about Porsche's involvement in sim racing and how it affects life at the very top levels of motorsport. Mark Phillips, one of the organizers of Porsche Club of Great Britain sim racing program, recently caught up with Porsche Carrera Cup GB driver Esme Hawkey, while I had the chance to speak with Porsche factory driver Patrick Long. Esme, what are the biggest things you've learned in your time sim racing over the last few weeks?
I definitely think, obviously, trying to keep that focus up and just trying to stay focused on my racing. The sims really helped in that kind of way. And just trying to keep that competitive side in me still burning, because going into the races, I'm doing a Porsche Carrera Cup GB race for a bit of fun with all the guys from Carrera Cup GB. So that's been really fun. And we do a race every Monday. So we do 2 races. One's a reverse grid. And it's just really, really good to kind of get on the grid. You got practice qualifying 2 races. So you just... yeah, it's like a normal race, but just you're kind of on your own in a sim, which, it's just great to kind of keep up that fiery spirit. And, it's been really, really enjoyable to just keep racing.
Patrick, as Porsche's only North American factory driver, how do you see sim racing changing and evolving in America once life returns to normal?
Yeah, I think there will be a byproduct of going back to work per se, and jumping in airplanes and being at racetracks where simulation won't be as prominent for a lot of us. But in the off season, I think it will. I'll never look at it the same after this point. Diving into the pace that these guys push these cars to online. It's, like I said, it's more foreign to me than any racing I've done in a long time. I think I would be more at home in a sprint car in real life compared to a sports car in online racing. And so I have found new processes. I've found new scheduling habits, communication technique, everything that I think I will apply to normal racing. But as far as simulation going forward, I think you're going to see a lot of evolution, software and hardware. I think you're going to see massive growth in the online community, in the amount of races that are on offer. And I think you'll see a lot of people like the PCA who are going to have more outlets for drivers, more driver online courses, more DE. And hey, maybe we'll be able to race Wednesday nights from the comfort of our own home after a long work day, and still travel to the racetrack on the weekends and jump in our real race car. But as we know about motorsports people, they can never get enough. So there's that scary part for me of having a steering wheel in my house in the basement.
Thanks to Esme and Patrick for their time. You can listen to the full interviews at PCASimRacing.com/interviews.
I got the burgers. I went to Bun Barn, Beef Patty Palace, Tomato Town.
Oh, thanks for getting all this, honey.
No problem. Getting all of it just took about 2 hours.
I just wish there was an easier way to get all your burger fixings from one place, you know?
Wow.
Dad, you didn't go to Mayo King?
You know our car doesn't fit in their drive-thru. I went to Mustard Chef.
I
I hate this burger.
He also went to ketchup, ketchup, ketchup.
When you're building something using components that don't work together easily, things could get ugly, fast. You wouldn't live like this, so don't make your DevOps team live like this.
This lack of burger cohesion is hard on all of us, Cheryl.
GitLab is the only single application for the entire DevOps lifecycle.
A tremendous thanks to our friends at GitLab for their support of the International Sim Racing Challenge between the Porsche Clubs of America and Great Britain. And if you weren't aware already, if you watched our broadcast last week, you'll know. But for those who are new this week, GitLab technology is actually used to develop a lot of Porsche's digital services, such as Porsche Drive, Porsche Passport, and Porsche's mobile phone applications. And if you want to find out more about how Porsche uses GitLab to develop software, you can head to bit.ly/GitLab Porsche and learn a little bit more about the partnership between Porsche and GitLab. And very cool to have Esme and Patrick Long on the broadcast of the International Sim Racing Challenge. And very cool to see their perspective on how sim racing is going to change and evolve over the next few years. Justin Prince.
Indeed, so good to have them on board for what should be a great race today. What has been a good challenge so far for these drivers. And what a way to challenge the drivers today as well here, James, at a track that journalist Robin Miller put best when it said it was the best test of road racing in North America. And boy, oh boy, these drivers are going to be tested today.
They are going to be tested. There's absolutely no doubt about it. And so I think on the other side, I want to turn to Peter Mackay just because some of the PCGB drivers have a little bit of experience with Road America. They ran a practice race earlier this week, and we saw a few drivers rise to the top of the occasion and claim victories. But what did you see in that race, and what do you think the PCGB drivers learned as they make the trek across the pond for the second leg of the International Sim Racing Challenge presented by GitLab?
Well, I think the one thing that's so important in sim racing is seat time. Unlike in the real world, of course, no matter how much money you have, you can't go and turn laps at a circuit for 8 hours on end, but you can in the sim, and because you have that opportunity, the very best in the business are going to do that, just like in any other activity. So for our PCGB guys, there was a little bit of nervous feeling when they knew they were going to be going to Road America, which is obviously a little bit less familiar to them than Silverstone is. But what I found in my own experience with Road America is that the more laps you turn, it just starts to click. When I first started driving around this track, I just couldn't get it to click, and I think a lot of the PCGB guys were having the same issues. But with a few test races throughout this week, there's a lot of them feeling a lot more comfortable. In particular, Austin Greatorex, who was a vocal critic of Road America before he had a few runs, and hey presto, he won their reverse grid practice race on Thursday night. So watch for Austin in the number 27 car.
Austin, incidentally, fourth amongst all the PCGB drivers in the standings at this stage after our first race at Silverstone last weekend. He's 11th overall in points. The man they're chasing, though, Justin Prince, is Matthew Dorrington, who picked up the victory for PCGB last week at Silverstone. And the one man he's going to have to worry about more than all others, Michael Polasek, who was second at Silverstone last week and currently is top of the board with a 2-minute .408 second lap. Going to be tricky to beat number 45, the current champion and the reigning champion of Porsche Club of America Sim Racing's top class.
And in final practice, just before they started off qualifying today, James, just 2/1000th of a second separated these two drivers from the top of the scoring pylon. They were also the only two drivers on 5-lap average times to record them in the 2-minute flats. Everybody else's average was about 2:01 or slower. So both of these drivers are on it today. It's going to be tricky. Dorrington, with his sim racing experience and his sim company, having a lot of experience, and Polasek, of course, with the experience, as mentioned, in PCA competition, James.
Polasek, who came away with that great run at the end of Series 4 to get the victory in the pro class of PCA sim racing here at Road America, and he was super quick all week. But I have to believe the recency factor is going to play into the hands of the PCA drivers, and that always was sort of the intention, Peter, that leg 2 would go to America once they finally got Road America lined up and dotted up, that race number 1 at Silverstone was going to naturally have advantages inherent for the Porsche Club of Great Britain, and the roles are reversed now. It's PCGB that travels and comes to Porsche Club of America's home turf, where the PCA drivers probably have a little bit more experience with this track, but at the end of the day, I think everyone's put in a lot of practice to try and get as fast around this place as they possibly can.
I think so, and that's what makes this format so exciting and why it'll be great to see much more of this sort of competition. Of course, we see it most famously in the golf world with the Ryder Cup between the United States of America and Europe, and what an amazing biannual contest that is. Of course, we saw this back in the mid-1980s in the motorcycle racing world, where they had the transatlantic match races, and of course, a young Freddie Spencer, a young American who really transcended the sport of motorcycle Grand Prix racing, and that was when riders from the United States would come up against the cream of the crop in the UK, and it was an amazing spectacle, and it'll be brilliant to see more activity like this here on iRacing and with the Porsche Club of America and Great Britain.
And also of note, for those of you watching your screens, you're watching qualifying at the moment. We're riding with Chris Walsh, who is going to try and get things done in that number 104 machine today, the white and the black on his car. Walsh setting a very quick time. He is currently holding down a 2-minute 1-second .165 lap, which would be good for 5th on the grid if it holds, and just under, maybe call it 2:12 left. So just about 2 minutes left in qualifying before we get to green flag racing. Another story that I think we need to hit, and I'll turn back to you on this one, Peter, just because it does involve a PCGB driver. Just the life and times of Matt Kyle Honey, who was so quick in qualifying at Silverstone and never really got the chance to show it. Got caught up in an incident very early on in the race last week. I have to believe that this is a redemption story for him, because he had one of the fastest times in practice outright. He was 4th on the board, so Kyle Honey's got some speed. I have to believe he wants to try and put one up and chalk one up for PCGB.
Well, we would hope so, but unfortunately we're just getting absolute breaking news as we see it just now, that Matt Kilhenny's pedals have broken, so he's had a technical failure which has put him out of this race, which is such a pity, because we saw him in the 12 Hours of Snetterton solo race a couple of weeks ago, where he lost the race by 30 seconds and had a 30-second pit lane penalty early on in the race, and of course last week was taken out at turn 1 by Liston as well. So it's really not been he's really not had the luck, and we've not yet seen what to expect from Matt Kilhenny at this level of competition in sim racing.
A shame. We'll have to wait for, I guess, the second edition of the International Sim Racing Challenge to really see what Matt Kilhenny has to offer. Broken pedals put him out of competition before we even get to the starting grid for our race here. We're not terribly far away from that moment. About 30 seconds left in qualifying for these drivers to try and throw down quick laps. But Justin Prince, any more names that we need to pay attention to beyond those we've already talked about before we get racing?
I think you have to keep an eye on one of the top Canadian drivers in practice, and Liam Rodzitas was in top 3 in practice, but is currently very deep in the pylon and qualifying in 16th. He's got a fast car and some good consistency, just couldn't carry that into the qualifying session. He's going to be one of the Canadians I think you'll see try and charge up for a good top 10 finish by the checker flag today.
As qualifying comes to a close, and we will get set to bring you the starting grid for the second leg of the International Sim Racing Challenge between the Porsche Clubs of Great Britain and America, live from Road America in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, and of course presented by our friends at GitLab. Michael Polasek holds on to the top spot. He'll start from P1 with a time of 2 minutes and 49 1/1000ths of a second. Matthew Dorrington, who won last week at Silverstone, starts from second, Third will be William Chadwick. Matthew Kikis out of the Carolina region of the PCA starts in the 4th spot. 5th is where you'll find the 28 of Greg Carr. James Shute begins our race from the 6th position. 7th will be Christopher Pies. Chris Walsh rolls off from the 8th spot. 9th will be the 927 of Jeff Lewis. And Lynn Wilson in the 1 car begins our race today from 10th.
Charles Yule starts off in 11 today, and a newcomer for the challenge is Trez Rawhorn, who will start in 12th position with the 201.302. Mark Hoot starts in 13th, with Joe Stiffel starting in P number 14. Gavin Halls, one of the top drivers to keep an eye on for the PCGB, starts in 15th alongside Maria Mozitas, with Patrick Gill in 17th. Dewey Kane starts off at 18th, Jonathan Shum in 19th, and Matt Mitchell rounds out your top 20 today, Peter.
In 21st, we have the number 27 of Austin Greatorex. He would have expected a little better in qualifying there. In 22nd, we have the 913 of Leif Peterson, followed by James Sue and Christian Rava. In 25th will be John Montgomery. 26th will be Mikael Levesque. 27th, Mark Phillips, who finished in the top 10 last time out, so a little bit disappointing for him. 28th is the number 718 of Brian Swift. 29th will be the 981 of Andrew Elsom. And 30th will be the 26 of Ed Nelson.
Carl Sharkey rolls off from 31st this afternoon or evening, depending on where you are. Rodney Campbell will be 32nd. 33rd is where you'll find the 24 of Igor Soiker. And Mike Knighton, who gave us that onboard lap at the beginning of the broadcast, begins in the 34th spot. 35th is where you'll find Jacob Shum. Robert Cottle starts from 36th. Stuart Clark will begin this race from the 37th position, and 38th is where you'll find Jake Steinbrink. Ian Hannon rolls off from 39th on the grid, and 40th, Justin Prince, is where you'll find Bob Moore.
Danny Jones, 41st position. Luke Polroyd starts in 42nd, with David Storting 43rd. 44th spot will be Bruce Robinson. Paul Soak starts in 45th, with Randall Ayers deep in the field in 46th. Carl Hazelton starts 47th, with the number 14 being the last driver recorded time. That is Mark Seal. The drivers do not set times in qualifying. Matt Kyle Henny has talked about with the technical issue. Paul Regan, no qualifying time. Toby Barlow, no qualifying time today.
That is your starting grid for the second leg of the International Sim Racing Challenge presented by GitLab from Road America. We take a look now at the track facts one more time before we get racing here in Wisconsin. We are at Road America and on their full layout this afternoon in sim, or maybe even evening in sim, so take a look at the time. But we're running the full course. It is 4.048 miles, 6.515 kilometers, 14 turns here. We race in the morning, pretty early actually, as I double in and double up at the in-sim. Everything in-sim that you see is set to the default day in iRacing, May 15th, 2020. It is just about 8 a.m. in the morning local time in Wisconsin, and air and track temps are solid to say the least. 65 degrees Fahrenheit, 68 degrees Fahrenheit here. Winds to the southwest at 9 miles an hour, and 40% humidity. And I guess if we're going to play the very fair game, we're going to make sure that we do everything the right way and get a few numbers here. So if you're looking at air temps in Celsius, degrees centigrade, it's about 18 degrees Celsius air temp. Track temp is about 20 on the nose. So relatively warm weather here in the spring, as it would normally be in Wisconsin, and not the worst weather in the world for racing, Peter McCann.
Absolutely perfect conditions to go racing on this classical layout. I just love Road America, and I love the fact that it has not changed one bit since they started racing there in 1955 when Phil Hill won in a beautiful Ferrari Monza. And of course all the biggest names have won here: Penske, Shelby, McLaren, Andretti and Fittipaldi. They've all won here, but who is going to win this round 2 of the International Sim Racing Challenge? Who's it going to be? What do you think, guys?
I wouldn't want to place any bets on who's going to win. What I am going to place bets on are the trouble spots, which There are a few that we can note. Turn 1 is a tricky high braking zone. We've seen a lot of people go off, even on corner exit at 1. We've seen a few get into trouble. The downhill braking zone, that tight left-hand turn, turn 5 after the moraine sweep, always catches out someone. We've seen some issues in turn 8, the end of the hurry downs right before the carousel, which is where the cars are traveling through at this time. And then once you exit the carousel, someone's probably going to run wide on the kink, but Canada Corner down at the end of this straight they're about to approach, known best as the Kettle Bottoms. Canada Corner is another high braking zone that ends up being very tricky, and they wrap their way through Thunder Valley, past the Bill Mitchell Bend. Turn 14 is another right-hander that brings you back up the hill, under the bridge, and back onto the main straight here at Road America. A technical course, a tricky course, a very diverse, complex course, a great challenge, as Justin Prince noted with Robert Miller, and so glad to have all of you watching around the world, whether or not you're associated with the Porsche Club of America or the Porsche Club of Great Britain. In either case, glad to have you on Podium Esports broadcast on the iRacing Esports Network of this second leg of the International Sim Racing Challenge presented by GitLab. It is going to be Matthew Polasek, or rather Michael Polasek and Matthew Dorrington that lead the field to green. Those two tops in points here. So the overall title is heads up between them. Whoever finishes tops amongst those two will be the champion of this International Sim Racing Challenge, unless we have a tie 1-2. We'll see how it goes. But in either case, pace car is going to get set to pull off, and we will get to go green flag racing for 50 minutes here at Road America. We wait for the moment and wait for Michael Polasek to bring his Lone Wolf Motorsports blue and green machine underneath the flag. And we are green flag racing in Road America. And it's a good run from Polasek, who's going to get charged hard from behind. It's going to be William Chadwick sitting right in arrears, and he'll jump to the outside to try and get around Michael Polasek as they go into turn 1 for the first time. Big run there from Chadwick, who draws even with Polasek, but I think is going to have to check up just a little bit to make sure you get through turn 3. Looked like a clean start, though, from pretty much everybody. They all got formed down very nicely, and Justin Prince, everybody all rolling as they make their way off towards the moraine sweep for the first time.
No major mistakes from anybody on this first lap so far, but you can already see Polasek knows the importance of the slipstream down this moraine sweep, trying to break that slipstream up. He's known for being a bit more patient and cautious on the colder tires. Chadwick, though, he's willing to send in a contact.
Contact. Chadwick hits Dorrington, and those two came together. I had a hunch. You can see Polasek riding wide. It's almost like he knew that Chadwick was going to drive it in a little bit too deep, but Polasek holds on there. Even with the damage, he's still the leader. Chadwick's the one that falls down the order and slides way into the back of the field. Dorrington got a little bit of damage as well, so that's an interesting one as people begin to have trouble down in the hurry downs, and it looks like the top 4 or 5 have escaped through turn 8. But a wild one here once we got to turn 5, and we talked about it, Pierre Marquis. We figured that was going to be one of the places where you saw incidents happen.
Yes, it is always a hot spot for action in turn 5. We must make our viewers aware of the quite unique orange zone rules. So what that means is if there is contact between two cars on the opening lap, the car deemed to be at fault is given a stop and go penalty, which is, of course, very detrimental to chances in the race. So I'm fascinated to see how the stewards call that one, because it looked like William Chadwick had the corner, and then the 45 of Polasek turned in. However, it will be really interesting to see how our professional stewards look at that one.
Going to be very interesting, especially because, and I think this is the thing that compounds it, Polasek still did have the nose ahead of Chadwick going into the corners. So we'll see how that one comes about with race control. We can also say that Leif Peterson has been black flagged for an incident a little bit further back here in the field. Chris Walsh and Chris Pies and Jeff Lewis also swept up in turn 7 in their hurry downs on that first lap. So a few incidents to talk about as people continue on, but it's Polasek, Dorrington 1-2, Greg Carr currently in 3rd, Matthew Kikish in 4th, and now I think Justin Prince will start to see some of the battles begin as Patrick Gill ends up in trouble, and there's an incident over in the middle between turns 1 and 2.
A little bit shaky in that part of the racetrack. They get back on going, Miller specifically after the hit to the inside wall you were talking about, but everyone else able to get through cleanly. Wilson looked very good in practice. We were talking about this and how good the speed was from Wilson. Having a good fight here for P number 6. Just lets the faster car on go as there's the lock up the brakes as well.
Wilson in a very good fight indeed. Just clear of Trey Drawhorn. These two, both drivers from the PCA stable of things, and a lot of fun to note, I think, across the board, and a lot of interesting bits and pieces that we'll see over the course of this hour and a half. Lynn Wilson, part of the Connecticut Valley region of the PCA, which features the state of Connecticut and all the way up to the home of basketball around the world, Springfield, Massachusetts, and home to the Basketball Hall of Fame. So if you like a little bit of orange rocks with your PCA madness, turn to the Connecticut Valley region. They might know a thing or two about it, but Wilson holding down the fort well for them. Trey Drawhorn, do the same. Drawhorn out of the Chicago region of the PCA, which covers the greater Chicagoland area. A lot of Americans and a lot of Canadians up towards the front of this field, but Dorrington doing a nice job holding it down, Peter McKay, as is Gavin Halls in the 38, who got the victory here, so maybe not a surprise off of his midweek strength that Halls is near the front of the field as well.
Yeah, he's really the next guy along from Dorrington. It's very much be a PCA-dominated opening lap. And look at this at the front, the 45 of Polasek weaving on the straight to try and break that toe. So to make our viewers aware, if you wonder why they're doing that, basically the car behind has a little bit of an advantage because the car in front will be punching a big hole, a 911 RSR-shaped hole in the air, which will make Matthew Dorrington, who we're right now on board with right now, will make his car's job a little bit easier and just help. So we'll watch this on the straight here. You'll see them really starting to gather a little bit of pace. It's also worth noting that these 911 RSR racing cars, they do not have anti-lock brake systems, which is banned in the WEC. So coming down here into turn 5 particularly, very, very easy to get a lock-up. And I think maybe that might have been what happened with the Chadwick and Polasek incident.
Not surprised there. Nothing from race control yet on that one. Igor Soyka, though, however, had an incident on that opening lap, and he has also picked up an orange zone infraction. So 60 seconds for Soyka to show when he comes down pit road. Look at James Hsu, though, at the moment, and Chris Pies. This is a good battle a little bit further back between 14th and 15th. Chris Pies, one of the Texans out of PCA. James Hsu, also heavily involved in PCA competition over the years, and no surprise to see the man from the Upper Canada region doing so well. Upper Canada region covering the greater Toronto area and the province of Ontario. So we've got more than a few Upper Canada region drivers in PCA's fold. So no surprise that they run well and they have a good start to this race too.
Yeah, Sue looking really, really good today compared to Silverstone. James had a rough one on the UK portion of this International Sim Racing Challenge. But for Pies, keep in mind, does have a bit of back damage to that rear wing from the first lap trouble. Doesn't affect him too much in terms of the straight line speed. Again, the challenge is where the corners come in. Has a good shot to try and make the pass here on a good run.
A really good run there, and it looks like Chris Pies is going to get to the inside of James Hsu and take over that 14th position. Pies, of course, as we know so well from all of his time in PCA Sim Racing, a driver out of the Lone Star region of the PCA as they've stacked it up a little bit. Incident between Christian Rava and a few more folks have turned around. Chris Walsh got in the back of Rava, and everybody went and checked up and tried to save it. A bunch of madness here right at the end of the lap.
It really is a race of attrition so far. There's been so many incidents. And of course, here at Road America, it's nowhere near as forgiving as Silverstone. Of course, Silverstone is the only FIA Grade 1 track in the United Kingdom available to host Formula One and has huge, expansive runoffs. Road America does not. You can see on screen here, of course, the walls that are so unforgiving. And we saw particularly back in 2006 when Catherine Legg had a huge accident in her champ car coming through the kink of turn 11. And those walls are really not very forgiving. So we're going to see a lot of our drivers coming into pit lane and using their fast repair.
We've seen the NTT IndyCar Series run here, Justin Prince, but I'm inclined to believe just with the runoffs, this has always felt more of a sports car facility to me than it has an open wheel facility. Not to say that the racing isn't great for both, but it is that kind of very tricky test that only, I think, sports car endurance racing can provide to really bring out the best of the best and the most consistent over the course of a stint and a half or so.
And don't forget as well that the WeatherTech Sports Car Championship does come here still too, as well as the NASCAR Xfinity Series for stock car racing. and it always puts on an intense, challenging show for the drivers, because not just the length of having to go around a whole lap for 4+ miles and 14 turns, but as well the difficulty of the said turns and the amount of elevation changes just on the front straightaway you see already alone. Having to go right up the hill, then start to crest on the way down the hillside for the start of turn number 1 down the Road America straight. That can catch so many drivers off. And don't forget, when drivers have to pit fairly soon, they'll have to charge up that hillside for one of the toughest pit entries in all of road course racing in North America.
Because you really do have to charge up that hill. I think it's worth noting how much we need to emphasize that as we ride on board with Matthew Kikis, one of the drivers out of the Carolina region of the PCA, which covers a lot of the center of North Carolina. So anyone in the triad or the triangle, whether or not it's at Greensboro, High Point, Winston-Salem, Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, the brands across that area, many and plenty, especially if you're a big basketball fan. It's a bit big in North Carolina. North Carolina and Duke both call, I guess, that region home. They're both within its footprint, although don't tell Matthew Kikis that, a man who's got many associations with North Carolina State University, who happens to use those red and white colors you see on his car as their colors in athletic competition. So a neat little link there for Matthew Kikis, but he currently is chasing down Greg Carr in that 28 car. Carr coming out of the central New York region, which covers a lot of the Finger Lakes and what we think of when we think of New York State. Some of the towns involved there: Binghamton, Oswego, and Syracuse, home to Syracuse University and the Orange, who love to play that basketball in that big old Carrier Dome, and are home to many a personality that you see on American television, the Newhouse School of Communication, one of the finest. Also, incidentally, home to Watkins Glen International on the racing front, so a bit of a connection there with that region as well. And it is Carr who currently holds the 3rd position over Kikis, and then James Youth, who also has some New York connections. He's one of the drivers from the Hudson Champlain region of the PCA, which is just about right next door to the Central New York region, covers the Hudson River Valley that runs up from New York City to the state capital of Albany, and touches just about everything along the banks of the Hudson. So Youth going to get a good run. His brother Mark Youth out of the St. Louis region of the PCA, which covers the greater St. Louis area, incidentally running intense. So both Youth brothers putting on a very good showing as it stands. And as we look through the field, we'll try and bring you a few more good battles to pay attention to. One interesting one, we talked about him a little bit earlier. I figure it's interesting to go to him since we don't have too many Canadian-British battles on the racetrack, but we'll slide back to Austin Greatrex and John Montgomery, or what was a battle between Austin Greatrex and John Montgomery, because Greatrex just made a great move on the inside, Peter, to take over P13.
He really did, but Montgomery is certainly not giving up, as you can see here. As long as you can hang on to the back of the car in front, you can get especially if they're slightly faster than you, sometimes it's better just to let them go and then try and learn from them. And it's amazing what you can pick up following a slightly faster driver. Not only do you get the toe or the draft, but also you can maybe get a new braking point or a new turning point. And round this Road America circuit, although the corners might look relatively straightforward, they are incredibly nuanced and really require such a specific technique. It's interesting you mentioned Watkins Glen. I would think if racetracks had siblings, I think Road America and Watkins Glen would be brother and sister, because they are quite similar in character, I believe.
You make a valid point there, Peter, when you consider all the long straightaways and the carousel that you see at Road America, which is mirrored in large part at Watkins Glen. A few bus stopping points as well. Certainly right about that. And a similar sort of feel, I think. Maybe a little bit narrower is Watkins Glen. You've got the bright blue Armco all over the place there, but still 2 very fantastic circuits that you'll see. The IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship visit year in, year out. They are staples of the calendar between Road America and then obviously the Salem 6 Hours of the Glen, one of the crown jewels of racing and sports car racing in North America, and one of the events in the Michelin Endurance Cup. Michael Polasek still your leader, and good battles abound. There's that great pack between Greg Carr, Matthew Kikis, and James Youth that is fighting for 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Trey Drawhorn and Gavin Halls in a cross-continental battle. Drawhorn currently sitting in 8th, Halls in 9th. just a little bit further back, side by side, are James Sue and John Montgomery in a double Canadian battle. And then you've got Jake Steinbrink, who's also just sort of hiding in there too. Luke Holroyd and Jacob Schum, almost nose to tail, 17th and 18th. A lot of fun, especially in this mid-pack, Justin Prince, and a lot of places where we could go.
And that's just partly the nature of how the racing can progress here at Road America. And mind you, too, if there's any lap traffic that gets involved, it can break up those groupings and be used as picks potentially in some cases. Taking a look at James Sue, for example, on your screen. He's got clean track. Compare that to what was just going on for the battle for third. That got broken up a bit because Greg Carr was able to use Randall Ayers as a pick to separate himself by 3-4 car lengths. So that's, again, just partly the nature of how the races can progress here, that once drivers start together, yes, they eventually break up into these groups of 2, 3, and 4 who you may see for the entire day.
Also of note here, it is a racing incident that race control has deemed that incident between William Chadwick and Michael Polasek in turn 5 on lap 1 to be. Shall we stay? Green flag racing, no penalties for either. Chadwick, however, deep in the field, currently scored in 31st, as Polasek is your leader over Dorrington by about a second and change. And then a whole host of action across the board as we currently work our way through the first 15 minutes of our 50-minute second leg of the International Sim Racing Challenge, powered by GitLab here at Road America. We might turn our attention and our eyes to Lynn Wilson and Trey Drawhorn. Peter Mackay, action there down the front straightaway as they go side by side.
They really are, and that's a big move where you've really got to commit into turn 1. I was watching before this race a track guide with Patrick Long, who you interviewed before the race, and he always said he uses the access road on the left-hand side, which is a really, really helpful braking marker, and depending on the car that you're in, especially these RSRs, you can brake pretty late. You can use that access road as a really good reference point. So if you're going up the inside of someone, just using your peripheral vision and picking that braking point. Also on turn 1, the ideal line is taking a lot of curb on the inside. And in general, in Road America, you do take a lot of curb. So hopefully got that move done there.
A curb is a curb is a curb is a curb, whether or not it's spelled with a K-E or a C-U. But in either case, I think the interesting thing about turn 1 here at Road America and the amount of curb that you do use is that sometimes it's very easy, and we've already seen it or once earlier in this race, for drivers to try and get back on the throttle too quickly and spin themselves out on corner exit. If it happens at Road America, it tends to happen at turn 1 more than it does anywhere else. And I think that's something that a lot of these drivers, Justin Prince, are going to have to be mindful of as we progress through this 50-minute race.
Yes, indeed. Right now, as a bit of the battle that we were keeping up with Drawhorn has been broken up a little bit with trouble with Wilson, but it's also going to be something to keep in mind, too, with the curbing you mentioned a little bit, where it can potentially damage a bit of the bodywork. A couple drivers in practice hit the curbing a little bit too hard and shifted upwards some of their front fenders. That can affect them with just about a mile an hour or two down the straightaways. So that's something to keep in mind as these drivers start to slowly approach that pit window until they can get some of the damage fixed in some of their cases until the pit stops.
Pit stops here, which we're already seeing from Luke Holroyd. I think he might have ended up in a little bit of trouble, though. Already on pit road as we sort through everything and wait to see who's going to win this battle between Kikis and Huth. That's the one that sort of caught my eye here because everybody else is spaced out a little bit, but Kikis and Huth have stayed side by side as you ride on board and see what happens with Carl Sharkey and Leon Radzitis. This also a good battle too, Peter. These two racing for 19th and 20th.
They are, and Carl is one of our PCGB racers there. That brilliant livery or paint scheme, as you say, on his RSR, and he's getting slipstreamed here in the number 10 Strasser Porsche in that black and red paint scheme. Strasser are one of the independent sales and service specialists for your Porsche in the United Kingdom, and very close to contact there going into turn 1. It's also worth mentioning that we are getting very close to the fuel window now. We should expect these 911 RSRs to go for a maximum of around 28 minutes on a tank of fuel. So they will cough and splutter out of fuel at that point. So expect the drivers to start coming on kind of any time from now.
somewhere within the next 10 minutes, I think, is when we're going to see that. We are 7 minutes and change removed from the halfway point of our race today, or this evening, depending on where you are. Rositas, incidentally, one of the drivers from the Upper Canada region of the PCA2, as we ride on board with Lynn Wilson in the one machine. Wilson, who we've already talked about a little bit more damage on the front end of his machine, trying to hold on Jake Steinbrink and Jeff Lewis, who themselves are trying to rally from incidents earlier in this race and roll on through the carousel to gain a few more spots and a few more points. Justin, thanks.
Yeah, and this has been where, for a lot of drivers, they've been able to keep their cars clean. They're able to move on forward. For Wilson, we talked about a bit of the damage after that battle for about 7th spot, really hurting that race car, and it's now put them up for grabs for spots. But pit stops are already underway, an undercut strategy, it seems, for Dorrington to try and get the edge on Polasek.
So there is your strategy play from Matthew Dorrington, who has come down pit road early to try and get the undercut and jump ahead of Michael Polasek whenever he decides to come down pit road. So now, same question that we asked last week between Dorrington and Polasek, just the roles are reversed. Peter Mackay, if you're in that 45 car leading this race, what do you do and how long do you wait?
Well, I think one thing we've got to consider is the traffic. We saw there on the onboard with Polasek that it's getting very, very busy with much slower cars out in front of him. As you see, Dorrington is going to have all that to deal with now. So this could be the key to this race. Now, we must make our viewers aware, if you're used to watching motorsport, you'll know that the blue flag normally means to yield to the car behind you if it is on a lap ahead of you. So in the top left hand side of our driver's screen, they will be given a blue flag to say that a faster car is behind them. However, in this series, the blue flag is not a mandate where you have to pull over. It is simply an advisory. So it's very much down to the discretion of the driver, and that blue flag discipline, or that manner, is going to be really crucial. We see Polasek here. He's about to come across that traffic. If I was him, I would get in the pits and get out of that sequence.
So you would think that we may see Polasek on pit road in short order as he works away around lap traffic. That was Ryan Swift that Polasek just got around. Does he come down this time? There's plenty of lap traffic to slow up Polasek, and this time he is going to answer the call immediately. Justin Prince, no waiting for the 45. He will come down pit road this time and immediately try and hold serve on Matthew Dorrington.
Looks like many of the early drivers in the pack also following suit. Carr, Kekas, as well as James Huth amongst that grouping. And as Peter said, he had to come down. There was just way too much traffic and was really holding up. You've seen it especially through Thunder Valley and through the Bill Mitchell bend by at least a near full second. Now this puts the ball right into Dorrington's court. He's still got a bit of traffic in front of him, but it's not as thick as what Polasek had to deal with.
Not nearly as thick. That's the issue, and that's what we're going to watch here. Dorrington currently coming up the final straightaway now. So will Polasek get out in time? That, I think, is maybe the biggest question waiting for Dorrington. He's going to roll on pit road, and I have a hunch he may well just beat out Dorrington. It's going to be so close, but only just does Michael Polasek beat out Matthew Dorrington. It was very tight, and there's plenty of lap traffic in between those two. But Polasek has got, he gets turned over in turn 3. Contact between Polasek, and it was Jeff Lewis in the 927 who just didn't get on the brakes in time and got in the back of Polasek, and that will change everything. Peter Mackay.
That is huge for this race. I was just about to say Matthew Dorrington would have had the advantage there because he would have one lap on his tyres, getting that vital bit of heat into the tyres. Even if he didn't change tyres, just getting them back up to temperature. But there you go. We said it, how key coming through the traffic is. And personally, I think a proper blue flag rule where a blue flag is a mandate to back off is a safer way to go racing, in my opinion.
Wait to see what race control does with Jeff Lewis in the 927, but more importantly, Polasek well down the order and well away from Matthew Dorrington. So Dorrington now will cycle to the lead once we get wrapped up and done and dusted with all of these pit stops. About 27.5 minutes left to go in this race. Now, currently, Joseph Stiffel is your leader, another one of the drivers out of the Chicago region of the PCA, but all of the top 8 have yet to come down for service. And then you can add Jake Steinbrink and Michel Levesque in 10th and 11th to that bunch as well. Here comes Gavin Halls, though, currently the top running driver in PCGB for service, Justin Prince.
Yeah, and the further they go, the less fuel they have to put in the tank. Mind you, right before that incident was just taking a look at the fuel numbers and the difference between Dorrington and Polasek. Polasek had put in 1.5 seconds less of fuel, and every single gallon and every single drop of fuel you put in the tank absolutely matters for how long you're sitting in the pit box. It came into play last race at Silverstone. There's a chance it might have came into play if things settled down in a different direction on that battle for the lead before. So this might come into play here with Joe Stifel and co. He isn't in position, though, to take the net race lead. It's one of the longer pit deltas in iRacing road course racing, about 50 seconds in the pit lane. Right now, the gap between him and Dorrington's of only about 32.
A tremendous amount here that Polasek's going to have to try and climb up here. Just looking at timing and scoring, it is about 10 seconds and change that Polasek has to gain on Dorrington. The saving grace for Polasek, though, at least at this stage, there is traffic all over this circuit and not really anywhere to escape. And maybe the ironic part, Peter Mackay, that I think we should touch on, because Justin Prince nailed it so well. Yes, Polasek had a faster pit stop because he took less fuel, but you could also make the case that if Polasek hadn't managed to take as little fuel, that he would have ended up behind Jeff Lewis, and maybe we don't have that incident over in turn 3 to begin with.
Well, of course, you never know that, and Polasek, he made absolutely the right call to go into pit lane when there was so much traffic there, and also very impressive that he led by no more than a second in his opening stint. So he was the one having to do the hard work out front, and for him to use a gallon and a half less fuel than Dorrington is quite impressive. Obviously, Dorrington was pushing hard to have to keep with him, but this race is absolutely not over. We've seen that the lap traffic is a real menace. We saw it last week out with Lewis, who got involved in an incident there as well, coming out of second place. And we've just seen on the chat there that Lewis has been given a black flag for that incident with Polasek. It's all happening here.
Absolutely is all happening, and as we cross the 25-minute mark, it is now time to bring you our iRacing Midway Race Break, which as always is brought to you by iRacing, the world's leading online racing simulation and the simulation powering the International Sim Racing Challenge presented by GitLab. Developed from the beginning as a centralized racing and competition service, iRacing organizes, hosts, and officiates races on virtual tracks all around the world. iRacing is home to a wide variety of officially sanctioned series, with racing for the Australian Supercars, IndyCar, IMSA, NASCAR, the World of Outlaws, and more. Joseph Stifel, your leader over Chris Pies. Mark Youth runs in third at the moment. Fourth belongs to Trey Drawhorn. Austin Greatrex holds the fifth spot. Sixth belongs to John Montgomery. Matthew Dorrington rides in seventh at this time. Eighth is where Greg Carr is. Ninth belongs to Matthew Kikis. And 10th, Justin Prince currently is held by Liam Radzitis.
James Youth all the way back at 11th spot. Michael Polasek currently in P number 12 with Gavin Halls in 13th. Bob Moore, Christian Raba in 14th and 15th. Paul Riga's gone from 50th up to 16th position at the moment. Does still have to pit, though, with William Shadwick with a pit stop in 17th was involved in the first lap trouble. Carl Sharkey is in 18th. Michel Levesque is in 19th. And Dewey Kane, currently serving his pit stop right now, Peter, is in 20th.
Yeah, it's all starting to shuffle out now. It's amazing, though, that those drivers that are still out there, they're right on the very limit of how much fuel they're having in their tank. Of course, out in these 911 RSRs, they have a very sophisticated dash on the steering wheel, which tells them not only how much fuel they have in the tank, but even how much fuel they're using on average per lap. It's an incredibly useful tool. And if the driver feels like they're using too much fuel, the RSR even has a switchable throttle map where you can actually run the engine slightly leaner to squeeze out just that little bit more fuel mileage. It's a seriously sophisticated piece of kit, this 911 RSR.
Jeff Lewis currently in 21st after the penalty, and probably lined up to go down the pylon a little bit more. In 22nd is Jake Scheinbrink. Jonathan Shum runs in 23rd. 24th is Jacob Shum. So father-son running nose to tail on the leaderboard as well. Interesting little bit that. 25th is Rodney Campbell. Chris Walsh runs in 26th. 27th is Ed Nelson. Stuart Clark 28th. 29th to Charlie Yao. And 30th, Justin Prince to Brian Swift.
Bruce Robinson's in 31st. Lynn Wilson in 32nd position right now with Mike Knighton, the last driver of the lead lap at the moment, in 33rd position. Andrew Elsom's in 34th with Matt Mitchell in 35th. Carl Hazelton 36th. Patrick Gill is in 37th. Danny Jones in 38th. Leif Peterson, after having an orange zone violation to start the races, in 39th. James Schultz is in 40th position, James.
Robert Cottle runs in 41st. 42nd is Igor Seucher. David Stewart, 43rd. The last car, one lap down. Mark Sherrill runs in 44th. He's 2 laps down, as are Luke Holroyd, Randall Ayers, and Ian Hannond, who carry us to 47th. 48th is Mark Phillipson. Paul Solk is the 49th and final driver scored in timing and scoring. And that will conclude our iRacing Midway race break, with over 170,000 drivers on the service and over 80 laser scan tracks and cars to choose from. iRacing is the original esports racing game. And for more information, you can visit iRacing.com today. We'll also remind you that our coverage of the International Sim Racing Challenge is brought to you by our partners at GitLab. GitLab empowers your team to thrive remotely, and their all-remote team works from over 65 countries to build the leading collaboration tool for DevOps. Discover everything GitLab has learned in their remote work playbook and visit GitLab.com for more information. They also are part of the team that helps to develop Porsche's digital services, such as Porsche Drive, Porsche Passport, and Porsche's mobile applications for iOS and Android. And to find out more about how Porsche uses GitLab to develop software, you can check out bit.ly/GitLab Porsche. We have cycled through pit stops in full, and Matthew Dorrington is clear by 6 seconds over Greg Carr. And for those who hadn't pieced it together yet on timing and scoring, the gaps that you see are between individual cars, not to the leader outright. So Carr has got about 6 seconds to get to Dorrington. Kikis has about 1.3 to get to Carr, but I think the story of the race so far, Peter Mackay, is Michael Polasek and the contact with Jeff Lewis, and how this race probably would be much, much different looking as it stands had Lewis not gotten into the back of the 45.
Well, I don't think it's over yet. Just while we were having our iRacing mid-race break, Michael Polasek is on the move. He's only 10 seconds away from Matthew Dorrington. This race is not over yet because we've got a big field here and quite a narrow racetrack in places with some real treacherous places as well. So Michael Polasek is he'll be hot inside that car, and we know that he's probably just got the ultimate edge on qualifying lap pace. So perhaps we might see a Nigel Mansell-esque recovery drive here, because I just don't think this race is over just yet. I think Polasek has just got that little extra percent where he needs it.
He's going to have to go bonsai here, and you can see just in the background, Polasek right on the edge of this group. You can see him working his way around lap traffic in this shot. It's Patrick Gill that he's trying to get to the outside of a Canada corner, and Polasek is just putting down some blistering laps here. The only driver in the 2:07s, along with James Youth and Matthew Dorrington, and everybody else at least in a 2:01. So Youth and Polasek have got some speed, no doubt about it, no question about it. And a good battle, even a little bit further up the way here throughout all this lap traffic, as you will dart down to the inside just to avoid it all. But Greg Carr, with nowhere to go, and Kikis with nowhere to go, as they all work around the lap machine of Luke Holroyd. Justin Prince.
A little bit dicey at this point, and smart move by the lap traffic, letting out the brakes as early as it could, try and let by the faster drivers, but that has allowed Polasek to close right on in, because while they were taking it nice and calm with that single file line on the right side of the track, Polasek sent it much deeper in on the brakes, had a lot more confidence in the speed to close up the gap. He's a man on a mission. Right now needs a bit of luck potential to catch up to Dorrington. Is about half a second faster a lap at the moment, but he's got a chance to get up to second. Remember, Polasek, his last race at Silverstone, ended up having steering wheel issues where multiple times he was able to keep it just barely on the track. Now, today, able to fix those steering wheel issues, and he has been a rocket ship whenever he's gotten clean space.
This is going to be very entertaining, I think, over these last 17 minutes to see how much ground Polasek can gain. He was a half a second quicker that last lap by. I think he's going to need more than that in order to get back to Matthew Dorrington, but I won't rule out a run to get to Greg Carr at least. It's not all that far away from Carr and Kikis. It's only about maybe a second and change if you go from Polasek to Greg Carr. So very intriguing to see what the 45 is going to do over these final few minutes. We turn our attention, though, to Stuart Clark and company. Stuart Clark and Ed Nelson having a good battle. This is a pretty interesting pack. You've got 4 here. Stuart Clark, Ed Nelson, Charlie Yao, and Brian Swift. A mixture of PCA and PCGB drivers here, Peter Buckott.
It really is, and I'm judging by the paint scheme of Stuart Clark. I'm not sure, but I wonder if he may be Scottish, because that is a very Scottish-themed paint scheme he's got there, at least, with that blue and white, almost Saltire-esque paint scheme there from Stuart Clark. But look at going back to Polasek, the number 45. He is really on it. We saw him coming through the lap traffic there, furiously flashing his lights at every possible opportunity to make sure that those cars in front are absolutely aware that not only is he behind them, but he is running through and in a hurry. Also, Greg Carr as well. That paint scheme that he's got there kind of looks like the current Williams rocket livery. Obviously further up the field than Williams are right now for Greg Carr, but nice looking paint scheme that. But look again, there's Polasek flashing his lights furiously, trying to get past. I really don't think this race is over. We've got 60 minutes to go, about 8 laps. He's got to push, but it's possible.
Intriguing to see a car, and I think in particular those SimAbility colors on this machine. SimAbility, a company that helps to develop solutions for drivers who want to go sim racing but might be impaired in some way, shape, or form. Some of those who have lost leg function or arm function, they convert wheels and convert rigs so that if you need to do something a little bit different, you think of maybe a Robert Wickens out of IndyCar who's done a lot of driving with his hands as of late as he continues to recover from his terrible accident at Pocono a few years back. But same kind of idea. Just shuffle around the controls a little bit to make sure that everyone has the access to race. And Greg Carr putting on a great show for SimAbility at this stage. Currently in the second spot ahead of Matthew Kikis and then Michael Polasek, although Huth and Polasek might be tangling for spots here before too long, and Huth is not going to fight the issue. Polasek's going to jump ahead. It almost seems like the Americans are sort of lining up here. It's all Americans between Polasek and Dorrington now, and I get this feeling that Kikis and Carr are not going to try and hold up Dorrington or hold up Polasek all that much because they know he's trying to catch Dorrington.
Yeah, he's going to be very aggressive, as we've seen here. Go ahead as well, Peter, on this, because he's still going full out because anything can happen. The gap is only down 8.4 seconds, Peter.
Well, this is where the multi-21 or the Fernando is faster than you call could be really helpful. Having team captains like they have in the Ryder Cup could be really helpful here, because it's very clear that Polasek is the fastest man on track and really the only threat to Matthew Dorrington. So if I were the team captain in an ideal world, I'd be getting on the radio to Carr and co to give Polasek a bit of a hand if the Americans want to claim honour on their home turf here at Road America.
And how interesting do you feel if you're Jeff Lewis, Justin Prince, knowing what role you played in all of that one? It's a very interesting place to be, I think.
I definitely think there's going to be an apology afterwards from Jeff Lewis over that contact in turn 3, because that completely shuffled the dynamics of potentially the race. I think there's definitely going to be a discussion at least to apologize and explain the scenarios, especially since Polasek just came out of the pit lane. Remember, that pit exit comes right in the middle of the racing line, just about down on the front straightaway, which can force you essentially side by side. It can really dice things up. Still, though, chance here for Polasek to try and have back-to-back second step on the podium finishes here if he can keep up this pace for the next 7 estimated laps.
He would jump up into P2. He's only about maybe a second and a half now back of Greg Carr for second, as Matthew Kikis is the next man on the list, and Polasek has been blistering pace, although Kikis himself was no slouch that last time by. He ran a 2:01.4, the Polasek's 2:01.2. Dorrington, though, the slow one, who I think might be just taking the edge off and burning up a little bit of that lead that he's got. And I like that strategy from him, Peter McKay. If you are on Dorrington's place, you have wiggle room to work with. You don't necessarily have a need to go all out. So why push it? Even if you bleed a little bit of time, you're still not bleeding enough to where Polasek would be able to catch you if this race went green and there weren't any issues for either Dorrington or Polasek the rest of the way.
Yes, absolutely. And we saw Dorrington, after his win last week at Silverstone, he mentioned that in the first stint, he really had to manage the tyre and the fuel load. And of course, here at Road America, that is no less important. So Matthew Dorrington, obviously, we're getting into the latter stages of this race now, only 12 minutes to go. So we've had 38 minutes of action. So the one thing that Polasek will have to be doing is he will be battering those Michelin tyres to get every last ounce of performance out of them. Whereas Dorrington, as you say, has the luxury where he doesn't have to. And perhaps maybe in the next 5 minutes or so, we may see Polasek's pace even out. Just one mention on that Simability car. I didn't realise that was what they do. What a brilliant cause! And of course, Alex Zanardi, former IndyCar Champ Car driver, has really put disabled drivers on the map and shows that nowadays with the right technology, there's absolutely nothing you can't do.
Zanardi also a gold medal winning Paralympian as well for Italy. So plenty that Zanardi's managed to accomplish in the days after his accident back in 2000. Wild to think that was almost 20 years ago, but in this case, it's still all eyes on just what Michael Polasek can line up or not line up in this race as we hang out and wait to see what happens with the 45 and its charge towards the front. He's been giving blinking lights to Matthew Kikis all over the place, and Kikis is held firm, at least for the moment. Certainly wants that last spot on the podium, I think, does that number 15, Justin Prince.
Yeah, indeed here, but here's the thing. As talked about, there's that bit of a draft effect that's going to come down the Road America straight, and it's one of the longest straightaway. Great corner exit right there to set up that run. We'll see if there's a bit of a defensive line. If he gives him the inside, he'll give him the inside, it looks like. No, he's got the faster car right now.
One of those where I think Kikis would have liked to try and held off Polasek if he could, but when you're that close and you're the 45, that's just about game over because you know Polasek's going to get you eventually. So just looking for that smart exit out of the corner, and Kikis will blend back into the racing line, and Michael Polasek will jump up to P3. Last time by, it was a 101.6 to a 101.6, so it was only 3/1000ths of a second that Polasek was able to gain. He had to wait to get to Kikis. So the only car left here is Greg Carr, incidentally. It's about 1.5 seconds from Polasek to Carr still. They both have gained a little bit on Matthew Dorrington, but as it stands, and that's the next battle, and we'll jump back to Polasek in a bit, but while we have a moment, I want to take a look at some of the other great battles amongst this field and turn our attention to a little group here. We've got Carl Sharkey and John Montgomery racing nose to tail here and working their way around lap traffic. That's one that should be a lot of fun. And Carl's one of those names in PCGB competition, Peter, that you look at, you recognize you're going to be in for a fight every time he's in a motor race just because he's got plenty of experience. And I think one of the brighter personalities amongst the group from what you've been telling me.
He certainly is, yes. We actually call him Buzz Lightyear in the group because in one of our test races at Watkins Glen, he tried to go too wide through the S's at Watkins Glen, which of course never works. And what ensued was an absolute space shuttle crash, and Carl was put about 100 feet in the air, so that's where he gets the nickname Buzz Lightyear. But Carl, he definitely loves this 911 RSR. I would say of the races that I've called that he's competed in, I think he's most at home in this 911 RSR machine. Some people prefer the 911 GT3 Cup car, which is a little bit more tricky to master, but maybe gives a little bit more feedback and feel. But Carl loves this 911 RSR.
And also of note, if we're completing the Porsche ladder, as it were, you've also got access to the 718 GT4 Cayman Club Sport MR. Justin Prince just added to iRacing in March and is going to be the feature car for Series 5 of the Porsche Club of America Sim Racing Series when they get back after it in September and October of this year.
And don't forget as well, it has the new damage model, so that's going to be something the drivers are going to have to adjust to, especially with parts of the car coming off compared to what the current model is on some of the drivers in their respective cars. It's going to be entertaining to see how these drivers adapt to the differences on how that car drives and handles compared to what we're seeing here today. Vastly different.
Vastly different indeed. Polasek was able to gain 0.2 of a second that last time by. Certainly not enough to make it happen. And we still have good battles elsewhere to keep our eye on. Chris Pies and Trey Drawhorn definitely in the mix for one of the best battles up through this field. Michelle Veskin, Jake Steinbrink also in a good one. Bob Moore and Charlie Yao still there too. And then you've got all the good stuff between Matthew Dorrington and Greg Carr.
I think Dorrington's got a problem.
Dorrington, I think, had an issue indeed. We'll go back and see what happened to Matthew Dorrington. And indeed, so there's the incident we talked about. And as we take a look, we'll go back on instant replay and show you that it happened in turn 5, that very tricky spot down in the grass. Dorrington was trying to avoid the lap traffic. And just like that, Peter Mackay, we have a completely different ballgame.
We certainly do. Turn 5, I think, is the most difficult corner on the track, and whoa, he gets it really wrong here. As we're coming down turn 5, this is downhill, off camber, no anti-lock brakes, remember, and he just gets a little bit locked up and gets out of it in a big way. Now, that's interesting. There's another car that just appeared there, so perhaps some connection issues where a slower car just appeared out of nowhere. It can happen where you get a slight latency in internet connection and all of a sudden there's a car in your path. It'll be interesting to hear from Matthew if that affected him. He did. I was just about to say before that incident that he had a pretty comfortable gap with 6 minutes to go, but that has all changed now, and that's bound to have rattled him slightly.
That will completely change everything because now Polasek might be in striking distance. He was still the fastest of this group, and it still might be a bit of a stretch. I think it might take one more mistake from Dorrington. I still think he's all right if he maintains pace, but Polasek's been coming, and you can see the lights flashing still on that 45 machine. Dorrington's still your leader, though, ahead of Greg Carr in the 28, Justin Prince.
And some of the fans watching along today had a good comparison to a robot with the way Polasek drives. He's been a robot on a mission, given one single goal: catch up to Dorrington, retake the lead. He's been doing this entire run. He has been near identical. Every single lap he's turned within 1 to 2/10 of a second, unless he's been around traffic since that pit stop and since that incident. He is determined to close up the gap, and this is just the type of person, I think we both know, James, that if he feels like he's got a shot, he's going to fight and close up this gap like he's doing right now.
This has been a tremendously impressive run. No matter what happens to Polasek, to bring back just about everything, to get hit by Jeff Lewis and still be in contention like this with a handful of minutes to go. You would not have thought it some 20 minutes prior when Lewis got into Polasek coming out of turn 3, and all of a sudden here we are, and it just about has evened out things as Polasek continues to work over Greg Carr and drag around, and there goes Carr to the inside, so Carr gets out of the way. So now it really is mano a mano in the final 4.5 minutes of the International Sim Racing Challenge presented by GitLab, and absolutely no delay from Polasek to start flashing lights on Dorrington, who now has to pick it up. And last time by 0.4 of a second that Polasek gained on the 13. Will he have enough time? It's 1.7 seconds about as they run. Is it going to be enough, Peter Mackay?
Well, I think if you're Matthew Dorrington, we've got to remember that when Matthew Dorrington was on his opening lap after his pit stop, he had a grandstand view of that incident where Polasek was punted into the gravel trap, and I can imagine he must have been grinning like a Cheshire cat at that point. But I can tell you that will not be the expression on his face right now, because he will say, who's flashing the lights in their mirror at me? Oh dear, it's the number 45, that green and blue machine of Polasek, and he is on a mission. The only thing that might hold him back, perhaps, is if he has beaten his tyres to death trying to catch up with Dorrington. But I would think that Dorrington, this is where he's really got to keep a cool head and trust his pace.
Maybe the most interesting piece of all, these drivers are going to hit some lap traffic in the form of Andrew Elsham, Bruce Robinson, and Mike Knight. And this trio here between the Northeast Ohio region and the Peach State region of the PCA going to be in the way, I think, just by bits and pieces, as we are looking at, I would say, about maybe 2 more laps left. We'll see what timing and scoring says as they come across the line, but given that it's about 2 minutes, I figure it's going to be very tight here. I think we're going to have 2 more laps left to settle this, and 2 more laps for Polasek to try and run down Dorrington in the end.
And the best part of the racetrack, James, for Polasek throughout this run has been through the carousel up through Canada Corner. I mentioned at the end of the Silverstone broadcast, that can be the trickiest part around that sector of the track. That's where Polasek gained a good half a second on Dorrington. It was dead even for the first half of the track. So it could come down to the final lap if the pace continues the way it's been working out for Polasek on that second half of the track.
1.7 to 1.2. He's going to need a little bit more, but he might get some help. And it makes me wonder, given that it's all Americans and a Canadian in front of Matthew Dorrington, are they going to give him any breathing room, or are they going to try and stop him up just a little bit and make life a little bit more difficult for Dorrington? Not the case with Andrew Elsham. He'll slide out of the way. We'll wonder and see what the case is going to be with Bruce Robinson, who will be next for Dorrington to catch.
Well, I tell you, Polasek Dorrington's gone late. They're right on each other now. This is so exciting. Michael Polasek right on the back bumper, right on the rear diffuser of Matthew Dorrington's 911 RSR. So it's traffic once more that has affected the result of this race. What brilliant stuff.
There's no telling about the gaps now. Gaps don't matter now, Justin Prince. Michael Polasek is there with a lap and about a half to go at Road America.
Yeah, just about a minute or so on the clock, as you see on the green trapezoid at the bottom of the screen. At this point, if I'm Dorrington, I'm playing very defensively. You've seen it a bit in the backdrop where Polasek sent it hard to get as much time gain as possible in the lap traffic before and still made it stick in the corner. I think it's going to come down to that type of move. Again, a much deeper send for Polasek on the break.
Polasek with the deep send there. Maybe not the best exit out of the corner, but it's going to be all about what Bruce Robinson does or doesn't do. Dorrington catches him in a very tricky spot. They're all going to go to the inside at turn 14, and it's not going to matter all that much. Robinson's going to get out of the way. Polasek and Dorrington are nose to tail as they try and get the toe off of David Stewart. 1 lap left to go at Road America and the International Sim Racing Challenge presented by GitLab, and it is 0.3 of a second between the best drivers from PCGB and PCA into turn 1 for the final time as they all slip to the inside of Michael. Well, there we go. Off to the side goes David Stewart. He gets out of the way. So again, still Polasek versus Dorrington, Peter Mackay.
Yeah, we actually do have to give a big hand to these cars that are showing good blue flag discipline and allowing this battle to ensue. It would be such a shame for it to be spoiled by an errant lap car, but this is just fantastic. The 2 best drivers from the Porsche Club of Great Britain and the Porsche Club of America battling on one of the greatest racetracks in the world. And look at this, Dorrington goes defensive. They almost gets into the back of him, Polasek there. This is so close. Oh!
Got too much of the curb.
Got too much of the curb, and that might be it. Polasek just caught the curb ever so slightly, and that could be all she wrote. It was tight in turn 5. You knew there was going to be something there, and he almost spun himself out. But at the end, that might be the gap that Matthew Dorrington needed, Peter McCott.
It might be, but you've got to consider that Polasek, his tyres are bound to be on the cords because he's had to push so hard. You've got to take your hat off to the 45 of Polasek for being able to recover all that lost time after that incident that wasn't his fault coming out of pit lane. But look at this, he's close enough to get a draft as he heads through the kink. That's a big commitment corner. Now remember, we saw Robin Liddell win the race here in the Michelin Pilot Challenge last year, coming into this very corner, turn 12. Canada corner. This is so exciting. It's not over yet, guys. It's going to go to the line, I think.
To the line. We'll see what happens. They come through Thunder Valley for the final time. Dorrington still with the lead. Polasek's going to have one more opportunity to send it off in the final corner and try and get the run. Dorrington slides wide. Here comes Polasek, who got a run and then got loose, and that will do it. Matthew Dorrington will hold off the charge from Michael Polasek to win the second leg of the International Sim Racing Challenge at Road America. One more lap. You figure, Justin Prince, and it would have been Polasek. You know there's going to be frustration on the 45 side, but Dorrington's going to be quite the happy man to win both races.
You're dead on. I think if there was that one more lap, it definitely might have been the difference for Polasek. It's just with that white flag, we've seen how hard he pushed turn 5, and you talked about the curbing in turn 1 and its significance. The curbing in turn 5 showed its ugly hand, and the fact that Polasek went too far into it and clipped the grass and nearly spun himself out, he doesn't make that mistake, there's a chance they're side by side by the time to get to hurry downs.
That's my thought there, too. Yeah, that he had two opportunities, I think, once in turn 5 and once coming out of the final corner where he had the momentum on Dorrington and just caught the curb ever so slightly, Peter McKay. And in the end, that was enough for Dorrington to hang on.
It really was. I mean, that was just heart-stopping stuff, but really well defended from Matthew Dorrington, a deserving champion of the International Sim Racing Challenge, and he was certainly pushed by the very best of the PCA, Michael Polasek. Very impressive from the number 45, and as you say, it could have been also different if it weren't for that collision with the lap car.
Also different if we have Jeff Lewis not there. If I believe it was Jacob Schum that Dorrington almost got into in turn 5, that almost made the issue, and very tight stuff. But Dorrington gets it done, finishes it off, and we now can turn our attention to some of the final few drivers here. Dewey Kang getting ready to come across the start-finish line to wrap up the International Sim Racing Challenge presented by GitLab. And as Dewey Kang crosses the line, we now turn to the full field rundown, and we'll tell you where your favorite driver finished. As Matthew Dorrington wins today at Road America, or tonight at Road America, for those of you watching in Europe, over Michael Polasek. Greg Carr came home in 3rd in the 28. James Hughes finished in 4th. 5th went to Matthew Kikish. 6th, the 003 of Joseph Stiffel. Gavin Halls finished in the 7th spot. 8th went to Mark Hughes. Chris Pines finished in the 9th position, and 10th went to Dre Drawhorn. Justin Prince.
Austin Greaterix finished off in 11th position, started in 21st. Liam Rodzitas recovered from the first lap trouble to get up to 12th. So did Chadwick to get up to 13th, with Carl Sharkey finishing in 14th, all the way back from 31st starting position. Sean Montgomery has a good run in the second leg of the International Sim Racing Challenge for a 15th-place finish, with Paul Riga in 16th. Michelle Levesque comes home in 17th, with Jake Steinbrink in 18th spot. Jeff Lewis finishes in 19th spot after his penalty with the contact a month with Polasek. And Christian Rambo rounded out your top 20 today here, Peter.
In 21st was Lynn Wilson, unfortunately having a spin about halfway through the race. In 22nd is Dewey Kang. 23rd was Chris Walsh, the first of the cars off the lead lap. 71 was Mike Nyden, who very kindly gave us a lap around Road America and Silverstone last week. In 25th was 386 Bruce Robinson. 26th was Andrew Elsom. 27th Stuart Clark. 28th was Matt Mitchell. 29th Patrick Gill. And 30th the 62 of Rodney Campbell.
31st this afternoon/evening went to Lee Peterson. Charlie Yao finished in 32nd. 33rd went to Robert Connell, and Brian Swift finished in the 34th position. 35th went to Igor Soiker. Bob Moore finished in the 36th position. 37th went to David Stewart. Randall Ayers and James Sue, 38th and 39th. In the top 40, that last spot in 40th, Justin Prince went to Luke Holroyd.
41st position went to Mark Shealy, with 42nd going to Jonathan Shum. Ed Nelson in 43rd, 7 laps down. Jacob Shum in 44th. Danny Jones finished in 45th, 9 laps down, with Carl Hazelton 46th, 13 laps down. In Hannon 47th, Mark Phillips and Paul Soak rounded out the 49 drivers who took to the starting grid. The other 2 drivers, Kyle Henney, question what if had technical issues with his pedals before today, while Toby Barlow did not make it to the grid today.
A wild drive here, and Peter McKay will let you do it all over again. We now bring in our winner of the International Sim Racing Challenge presented by GitLab. 2 wins, 2 races for Matthew Dorrington. He's with our PCGB man, Peter McKay, to tell us all about his run.
Matthew Dorrington, International Sim Racing Challenge winner. How does it feel, sir?
Yeah, can't believe it, to be honest. A brilliant battle with Michael, obviously. I think he actually had a little bit more pace than me. But yeah, it's fabulous. I'm absolutely chuffed to bits again. To win both races, I'm really, really happy.
I can imagine. What was going through your mind when you've come into pit lane, you've filled up with fuel, and you've had one lap, and you see Michael coming out in front of you in pit lane, and then all of a sudden he hits trouble in turn 2, turn 3. Give us your account of what happened there.
Yeah, so I was coming down the obviously main straight, and I saw Michael coming out the pits, and I knew I was never going to beat him to the first corner. But he came out in a bit of an awkward position alongside another car. And to be honest, the whole reason I did that early stop was because I had a bit of damage, but also I knew I wasn't going to catch Michael on pure pace, so I had to try something a little bit different. And obviously, unfortunate for Michael, he had some fabulous pace today. But yeah, the incident happened, and that was that.
Of course, with such a big field of 52 cars, the management of that traffic is, for us up in the booth, it was the key to the race today. Now, of course, I'm looking at your car on screen here, the MYDAS. That is your simulation equipment company. So if people want to drive like you and win these races, what sort of kit should they be buying from you to go a bit faster?
Yeah, so Midas Simulation is the name of it, and I run a direct drive steering wheel, triple monitors with a special custom built aluminium frame, and some Heisenfeld pedals, and then I just tweak it all to get it all as near as possible to real life, basically.
And how would our viewers get in touch with you to get one of those babies?
So they can either go on the website at www.midassimulation.co.uk, or they can send me an email at sales@midassimulation.co.uk.
Fantastic. Matthew, congratulations on winning the inaugural International Sim Racing Challenge. Well done.
Thanks very much.
Matthew Dorrington, your victor today at Road America, and we turn our attention from Matthew Dorrington to the man who was just there at the end. And I know this is going to be as tricky, I think, as we've seen in some time, but we now bring in Michael Polasek into the booth. And Michael, I think there's a glass half empty, glass half full way you could look at it. There is the disappointment of not winning, but at the same time, to come out of the incident with Jeff Lewis where you were almost 10 seconds back and just about run Matthew Dorrington down. Not a lot of people could have pulled that off. How did you manage to claw that time back in the second half of this race?
There was a bit of change in mindset from the point where I got hit to the point where I rejoined the track, and I was like, you know what? I'm the fastest car on track. I know that because I qualified on pole. I think I set the fastest lap of the race, and I was able to pull a gap on pretty much everyone there. So I pretty much changed my mindset to hell with it. Let's just go full send every single lap, try and put in fast lap after fast lap, and pretty much we brake for nobody. And I pretty much just pushed myself as hard as I could, try and navigate around the lap traffic as efficiently, as cleanly as possible. And I was very lucky to eventually catch up to Dorrington. Matthew's very quick. He is, I think, the second fastest driver here. He is extremely quick, and especially at Silverstone, he could definitely give me a run for the money, but he was very difficult to catch. I had to really do everything I could to close him down. And when I was fighting with him, that's when things got really exciting. And unfortunately, I just overstepped myself a bit too much at the final corner and ended up getting a wheel on the grass, sliding, and that cost me the win.
Very, very tricky stuff indeed. And I guess coming away from this International Sim Racing Challenge, what are your takeaways, and what have you learned about the differences in style between PCA, PCGB, and how cool has it been to be a part of such an interesting proposition and a new venture in sim racing for both these organizations?
Oh, it's really cool. This is the start of a new era for both PCA and PCGB, and I'm really glad to be seeing it becoming an international thing rather than just a national thing with both the PCA and PCGB. And I'm really hoping that we get some more nations in here, get a bigger grid, and get a lot of really good drivers in here, because I'm pretty sure around the world there are plenty of Porsche owners that are very, very fast, both in real life and on a simulator. You just got to find where they are.
Get them out of the woodwork, out of the weeds, and all that sort of stuff. I know plenty of organizations you need to thank. Who do you need to send the shout outs to for the P2 run today?
First of all, I got to thank my sponsors, Grand Prix New York and GT Hub. I also got to thank everybody in chat supporting me today. You guys really give me the encouragement and energy to push on even through hard times. I'd also like to thank the PCA and PCGB and GitLab for putting this on. This was a great event, and I'm really happy I got to take part in it. I also got to thank my dad as well for, again, spotting me through every single twist and turn of this exciting race. I also got to thank Matthew Dorrington as well for being a really good opponent, and also got to congratulate him for the win as well. That was a really hard-earned, well-deserved win right there. And I also got to congratulate the PCGB for taking their second victory in the International Sim Racing Challenge.
Impressive work on both sides, Michael. Thanks as always for your time up here, and we'll see you over the summer at some point. I know it won't be too long.
All right, thank you very much.
Polasek comes home P2 this evening, and it is Greg Carr who finished in the third spot. Greg rounds out the podium, and he is with Justin Prince.
Yes, indeed. And Greg, first things first, how are you feeling coming home with the final podium spot in the second leg of the International Sim Racing Challenge today?
Thanks, guys. Pretty excited, actually. I wasn't expecting to finish up this high, but yeah, I felt pretty good with the car and just tried to turn consistent laps and see where I would end up, and almost had it. But yeah, it was an awesome race with Mike and Matt and also the rest of the PCA America guys. It was really fun.
Yeah, that brings up the important question with what happened up towards the front, and with Dorrington having his mistake at one point that put you within drafting range. What was going through your mind as you had the chance to close up to the race lead in your hands in the final 10 minutes of this race today?
Yeah, when I saw he had the incident, I wanted to get in drafting range and then also pull Polasek with me so we all could fight, but he had just enough pace to pull out a little bit of a gap, and it couldn't quite catch up. So then when Mike caught me, I just let him by because I knew he had pace to catch up, and then I was hoping to draft with him and hopefully get back up toward the front, and almost worked. I think if we had a few more laps, we probably could have done it.
You said you didn't have as much confidence at the start, but you were quick in practice, quick in the race today. How much of a challenge was it to try and finesse this car around this track today and have that comfortability that you eventually gained as the event progressed today?
Yeah, I think it helped a lot that we've raced here before, so I kind of, even though it's a different setup, but I kind of knew what to expect as the race went on, and I think one of my strengths is as the time goes on, I don't fall off quite as much. I like the car better when the tires start to wear, so I was hoping to be there or thereabouts at the end of the race. And for some reason, when the car has a lot of grip, it sounds weird, but I don't have the confidence in it. It just is really twitchy, and I like the car to slide around a little bit more, so I was just hoping to get first couple laps clean and then settle in and just start turning quick laps. And fortunate enough, I was able to escape that incident on the first lap, and then yeah, just a lot of qualifying laps I was trying to put in toward the end there.
Indeed today. Now, before we let you go, is there anyone you want to thank for being a part of your run today, especially with the sim ability colors on the car today?
Yeah, I'd like to thank Glenn at Simability. He's been part of our team since the beginning, and that's Never Quit Racing. Glenn makes awesome products. He's taking a little hiatus at the moment, but hopefully he can come back and get back in the community. And yeah, him and his whole story has just been an inspiration, and always loved flying his colors on our cars. So great to have his support, and also the rest of my team, Never Quit, for I usually run in the V8 supercar, and they were kind of jabbing me when I told them I was going to start racing the Porsche, and I'm glad I can finish up toward the front for once for them.
Congratulations on the podium finish today, Greg. Very well deserved.
All right, thanks guys, awesome stuff.
Greg Carr comes home P3 this evening, and I guess now we turn it to Peter McKay first for final thoughts. Your first podium broadcast. First time we at Podium have ever had two teams from two individual broadcast programs join forces for an event like this. And pretty cool to be able to do this from a cross-continental perspective. What have you taken away from the International Sim Racing Challenge?
Well, I think first and foremost, we've seen some great racing, and particularly there, that finish was just the perfect fitting finish to what has been a brilliant event and a brilliant concept. It's something I think, as I said during the broadcast, I think it's something we should see a lot more of. And of course, there's Porsche owners all over the world who I'm sure have some sort of sim setup at home. And if you are watching and want to come and take part, you can, and it's a lot more accessible than you might think. And you can get in touch with your local Porsche club, who will be delighted to help you with that. And also, it's been a pleasure to call the action with you guys from over the other side of the pond.
I would say we echo those sentiments, Justin Prince, as we turn now to our Canadian voice for his final thoughts on the International Sim Racing Challenge presented by GitLab.
Absolutely love the opportunity. Once again, thank you, James, for the opportunity to working with you on this event. And as well, learned a lot as well from both you and Peter throughout the past couple weeks with this event. Absolutely phenomenal racing throughout the entire International Sim Racing Challenge in these Porsches. An absolutely entertaining finish to it all today between Dorrington and Polasek. Can't wait to see when the next time these two teams and groupings may come to forces, and how many of these drivers today come onto the racetrack, whether it's in the real world or the virtual world, and how they do throughout the rest of 2020.
There's going to be a lot to watch here. And Peter, before we let you go, first thought here, and maybe the most important bit, for those who are interested in following PCGB sim racing programs, how can they follow and how can they tune in to some of the next events that PCGB is going to hold?
Well, PCGB has got a hugely ambitious sim racing new division led by Mark Phillips, the number 9 who we saw in the race, who's been instrumental in getting that program going. And there's been some great enthusiasm from those involved so far. So the club championships, the first ever virtual Porsche Club of Great Britain Club Championship, begins a week tomorrow, which you can look at on the club's YouTube page, where you'll see the drivers going head to head at Dorrington Park in the 911 GT3 Cup car. So a Porsche 911 just like we saw today, but not as you might recognise it, a very different animal to what we saw today with the 911 RSR. So if you're involved, it's open to all. Get in touch with the Porsche Club of Great Britain if you're a member, and they'll be delighted to put you in touch with Mark and our happy gang, and we'll be delighted to see you on the grid. And if you just want to watch, I can be sure it'll be great racing. And Matthew Dorrington, our winner of the International Sim Racing Challenge, I believe he'll be taking part too.
I have a feeling we're going to see him involved in a few of these as we get set for more racing over the summer. Likewise, if you want to get involved with PCA Sim Racing, you can head on over to their website at pcasimracing.com, and all the information that you could possibly want is all right there. A calendar, all the rule books, some of the series that they take part in, the summer programs, information on Series 5, which is going to come your way in September of 2020, featuring the Porsche 718 Cayman Club Sport GT4 MR, the newest Porsche in the iRacing stable, will take center stage in the fall, and that should be a lot of fun. You can also find them at PCA Sim Racing on Facebook and on Twitter and on Instagram. There's also a link to the PCA Sim Racing Discord server on the PCA Sim Racing website, which is where all the magic happens there. So if you want to stay in touch with PCA Sim Racing, make sure you follow them and also keep track of all their broadcasts. Every PCA Sim Racing broadcast ever can be found on the iRacing Esports Network here on YouTube, so you can go back if you're really bored and go watch Series 1 or Series 2 or Series 3 or Series 4 or even the International Sim Racing Challenge if you so choose. Plenty that you want to pay attention to over the course of the summer as we bring you even more events. And also, if you want the opportunity to see some of the interviews in their full length that we presented pieces of earlier today, you can head on to PCASimRacing.com/interviews to see some of the folks that we talked to. You only saw Patrick Long and Esme Hockey, but we also had Lawrence Van Thor, Earl Bamber, and Matt Campbell, all Porsche factory drivers, chat with us over the past few weeks, and plenty of fun information that you can glean from their perspectives on how sim racing helps their real life racing program, especially in these trying times. All available for you there if you slide to PCASimRacing.com/interview. So far as we go here on Podium Porsche, Club of America will likely announce a few events over the course of the summer. We will give you more information on those as they come, but 2 events to tell you about here on a short weekend across all folks here and all parties involved in this International Sim Racing Challenge presented by GitLab. Memorial Day weekend in the United States and a bank holiday in the United Kingdom, so everybody laying low on a broadcast schedule, likewise a little bit shorter, but 2 races to tell you about. The finale of the Rowdy Energy Super Select Series, super late model racing from the recently added North Wilkesboro Speedway and iRacing, the 5/8 of a mile short track in Northwest North Carolina that played host to so much short track racing over the years, comes alive again as we crown a champion on Speed51.com and Speed51's Facebook page on Tuesday night, May 26th. And then the next round of the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series, the top series for competition in stock car sim racing, turns to Atlanta Motor Speedway at 9 p.m. Eastern next Friday, May 29th. And you'll find that broadcast on the iRacing Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube channels. It is about time to close out our broadcast here, the International Sim Racing Challenge presented by GitLab, but so many people to thank across the board. First and foremost to both teams at Porsche Club Great Britain and the Porsche Club of America for helping to organize this event, to Patrick Long, Esme Hockey, Mark Phillips and company that were all involved with the interviews, to our partners at GitLab, who you can find out a little bit more about by visiting gitlab.com. And if you want to learn more about how they work their magic with Porsche, you can slide to bit.ly/GitLab Porsche. Plenty of information you can find there. And then, of course, the organizing team at the Porsche Club of America for lining all of this up on the front end, for Jim Hemming, Doug Atkinson, the steering committee and company at All Taylor Burris for his help with guiding us through our broadcast today at Road America and teaching everyone about how to get around here as quickly as possible. And then for the broadcast team outright, for our producer Ryan Bauer, for Peter McKay and Justin Prince, I am James Pike, the voice of Podium Esports. Thank you so much for watching our broadcast of the International Sim Racing Challenge presented by GitLab, and we look forward to seeing you all in the near future. And if you want to find out more about Podium Esports, make sure you tune to podiumesports.com or twitch.tv/Podium Esports, or Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, or across all platforms you can find more of our broadcasts in the future. Thank you all once again for watching our coverage of the International Sim Racing Challenge presented by GitLab, and good night or good evening, wherever you may be.